Hello parents and professionals, and in today's video I am going to be giving you a stark warning about a particular strategy when it comes to behaviour modification in children and young people. This is one that you definitely don't want to be doing, so I'm telling you today about a strategy that does not work. This is something that you do not want to be doing, and that thing that you most definitely want to avoid is humiliation. So if you would like to find out more about why humiliation does not work when it comes to behavioural strategies and planning ways in which you can adjust a young person's attitude and outlook, if you want to know more about that, then just keep on watching. We all have a story, a time in the past, possibly from school where there was an unfavourable teacher, or a point in time with one of your parents perhaps, where you felt humiliated. It's one of those memories that really sticks for some reason. We're going to look today at what those reasons might be, and also why it is such an important tactic for you to avoid using as a parent or professional. Basically, if you humiliate a young person into using that as a method to get them to change the way in which they are behaving and reacting, this is likely to backfire. Let me tell you a little bit more about why. Humiliation has its roots in quite a few other emotions. If you think about it, if you can remember a time in the past when you felt a sense of being humiliated, there is embarrassment in there. There might even be some guilt feelings in there. There is definitely something about wanting to react to that situation, which is likely to be an unwanted reaction. If somebody's feeling humiliated, they're not necessarily going to find the path of redemption and want to correct whatever that thing was that caused them to get humiliated in the first place. Now, there is something to be said for motivating any person, be it a young person or not, using negative emotion. So in NLP we talk quite a lot about the motivators that come from our values, the things that we value most, and some people have a value for more positive types of emotion. That means that in order to motivate them, you tell them good stuff, things that you would like to see as a potential outcome from them. And for others, they are more negatively motivated, so you tell them what it is that they will fail at, what it is that they won't be able to achieve. And the theory is that creates a bit of a fire in your belly. You know, they kind of might want to prove you wrong, or that sense of loss or failure would really motivate them to work a bit harder or to try a bit harder. And I think that that's where sometimes our instinct to cause humiliation is really coming from. Nobody actually wants to make somebody else look stupid, least of all a young person. But sometimes it's a strategy that we might turn to almost shock a young person into paying attention. If you've tried to motivate them in every other positive way and that hasn't worked, then it might feel as if humiliating them is your last resort, that by providing this negative motivation, it's going to have them so shocked and surprised that they'll stop doing whatever that thing was we didn't want them to do and start doing whatever that thing was that we wanted them to be doing instead. But the reality is this: when we feel humiliated in a situation, it might cause the interruption that you were looking for. It might cause the reevaluation that you were hoping that they would make. But it always causes something else too. And this other thing that is caused is likely to be something that you definitely wanted to avoid, and that is that they will resent you for it. They will resent you for it quite possibly for the rest of their lives. Just like you at the very beginning of this video when I asked you, can you remember a time in the past when you felt humiliated? If you have a memory like that, it's not difficult for you to track back and find it, because those sorts of memories are significant to us. You know, they really stand out in our minds, and it's because of the embarrassment that goes with it. It's because of the sense of shame. I think shame is perhaps another good word to describe what it feels like to be humiliated. It makes us feel ashamed of ourselves, even if it wasn't necessarily warranted to feel ashamed of ourselves in that moment. When we humiliate someone else, it's going to cause them to have a very intense and quite negative reaction towards us. So whilst it might create an in the moment interruption to whatever it was that you wanted to interrupt, it's actually going to create a great deal of other resistance moving forward. And I've seen it happen in families where there's maybe just been a one-time event, you know, a one-time source of humiliation to the young person, but it was so profound to them, they held on to that sense of being humiliated for a very long time and became incredibly hostile towards the people around them because they carried with them a sense of injustice. And that's the thing with being humiliated, is it feels as if it's, even if it's accurate, even if the humiliation has been caused in a situation where they should have been jolted and they should have been corrected and it should have caused a shock to them, it feels unjust because of how it was delivered. If you ever need to pull a young person to one side to let them know that their behaviour is not on track, do that. Pull them off to one side and have a quiet word in their ear about it. But going straight in for the humiliation tactic is likely to have some really big ripple effects and some very negative ramifications. And your young person could end up manifesting that feeling of hostility for a very, very long time, and it will leak out into lots of other interactions that they have with you because they lose respect for you in that moment when you humiliate them. What you'll often find is that in those situations where your inclination to humiliate may have been there, is it's likely to have that sense of wanting to do it is likely to have happened in a situation where you had a young person who was perhaps being a little bit too cocky, and so you had a feeling of wanting to bring them down a peg or two, to get them grounded again and to get them humbled again in that moment. But there are better ways of being able to bring about that kind of a result, and my suggestion would be that rather than going for the humiliation tactic, that you instead let them know that you could have humiliated them in that moment, but you chose not to do it. And this is going to be a quiet word in their ear to let them know that they were putting themselves in a vulnerable situation by behaving the way in which they were, and that other people around them could see those unattractive qualities that they were displaying, and that at some point, if not you, there is an opening there for them to be humbled and humiliated by the way in which someone reacts towards them. If you want or need to let a young person know that their current behaviours and reactions are making them come across as overly confident and arrogant, you're better off giving them a heads up and a off to one side conversation about that before going down the humiliation route, because the damage it can cause is difficult to undo, and everybody goes into a kind of stalemate with each other. You will end up feeling like you shouldn't have to apologise for the humiliation that you caused because it was justified by the way in which they were being overly confident and arrogant. And they will feel as if the way that you treated them was so unjustified and obviously humiliating, that they will hold on to that resentment towards you, and you'll just end up with this real kind of tug of war situation going on. Or not that that's really a tug of war, is it? It's the opposite. But this kind of blockage between you in how you relate to each other going forwards. So don't be the person that causes the humiliation. It's going to happen to them at some point. If they have that sort of attitude in how they're engaging with others, they're going to bring that on for themselves anyway. But don't make it from you, because if it comes from you, you've got an awful lot more work to do on the other side trying to correct it after it has happened. Better to have the quiet word in their ear, tell them to correct their behaviour, be very specific. So if you say quite broad and general statements like I've used with you today, arrogant, cocky, overly confident, you're going to need to quantify that in some way. What specifically is it that you are seeing that dignifies that label? You know, if someone is being overly confident, is it the way that they flick their hair back and made a particular statement? Was it the tone of their voice, or the way that they looked at someone or did something? So get very specific, get very particular with this. I remember when I was nannying, and one of the children in particular, I remember having to have this conversation with her, and it was actually in relation to how she was interacting with friends that came over to her house. Now, in some respects, she was a young child, it was her house, so she maybe was just being a little bit showy-offy and a bit cocky. But when I said to her, I don't like the way that you're speaking to your friends right now, that wasn't enough for me to accurately explain what the problem was. Instead, I had to almost mimic her voice and say, when you said this and your voice was a bit like that when you said it, that is not okay. You don't get to use that tone of voice with guests that come to the house. So you need to maybe get very specific in what they say, how they say what they say, how they are looking when they say what they say, particular posture or gestures that they're using. If those are the things that cause you to want to have a reaction of humiliating them, then tell them that those things are bothering you, and give them the opportunity for them to readjust and realign themselves, so that you don't have to go down that humiliation route in order to help them correct that behaviour. So I hope that this video was helpful for all of you today. If you are not already subscribed to this channel, then make sure you go ahead, click the red subscribe button, click the notification bell so that you get notified the next time I upload another one. And if you have a memory of being humiliated, then put it in the description box below if you're not too humiliated still to be able to do that, because I always think like these strange experiences that we have when we're younger that cause such an intense reaction. Objectively now you can look upon it as an adult and go, well, that was kind of silly, but at the time it's just the worst thing in the world. You know, a teacher says something that makes the rest of the class laugh at you, that's gonna stick and maybe puts you off of French for the rest of your life. That was me. All right, so let me know your humiliation stories, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye everyone.